So there was a request to look at one verse and look at it in depth, this specific pasuk. And after we look at that pasuk and look at it in a little, whatever depth we can, we'll, God willing, we will go to discuss the blessings or the so-called blessings that Jacob gives to his children. He gave at the end of his days, he gave them a series of words. It's always good to give words before you go because you get the last word. So that's why it's a good time to do it. So the pasuk that was requested is chapter 48, verse 22. Chapter 48, verse 22. In order to understand it, the context, let's just go back one verse earlier to verse 21. We'll go back to verse 21, one verse earlier, and then from there, we'll have an introduction to 22. Vayomer Yisrael Yosef. So Israel was Joseph's father, said to Joseph, Hine anochi meit. Behold, I'm about to die. Hayal kim imachem, and Hashem will be with you. Ve'yeshiv eschem el eretz avosechem. I'll bring you back to the land of your fathers. Now, here's the verse. Ani nasati lecha, and I will give to you, or I have given to you, Shechem echad al achecha. So I gave to you Shechem. I gave to you, the way Rashi reads it is, I gave to you Shechem, achad al achecha, one more portion than your brothers. Asher lakachti mi'ad Amori v'charbiu v'kashi, and I took from the Amori with my sword and my bow. Now this is difficult for a few reasons. This pasuk. So we'll have to see what Rashi says, what the Gemara says, what the Midrashim said, and what the Hasidic master said. But it's difficult. This verse is challenging because, first of all, Jacob wasn't the one who took it with his bow and arrow. It was Shimon and Levi. And in fact, Jacob objected to their taking it. So that's the first thing that jumps out. Secondly, as my son asked me this week, you're not allowed to give an extra portion to the child who's not the firstborn. And one who's the firstborn is supposed to get the extra portion. So this is what jumps out at us from this pasuk. And let's see what Rashi says. I have given to you. I'm giving you an extra portion. Why? The Rashi is saying, you're getting this because this is a payment. It's not, according to his first approach, it's not a firstborn inheritance, but it's a payment. He's like the executor of his estate, and he has to make sure that he's buried properly. So I'm giving you an extra payment for making sure I'm buried properly. You got to choose wisely, make that person, and put the person in charge you think will bury you properly. So he says, I want you to bury me properly. And so therefore, I've given something to you. V'gam ani nasati lecha, Rashi says, and I've also given to you a nachla shetikavar ba, a heritage in which you'll be buried. And where is this heritage where you'll be buried? Those Shechem. This is the area of Shem. Meaning to say, because you are, it says in the earlier verses that Yaakov says, he asks him to be buried. He asks Yosef to bury him in the land of Canaan. It's for this reason that Yaakov gives him an extra portion, which is the portion of Shechem. As it says, V'asmos Yosef asher halu b'nei Yisrael miMitzrayim kavru b'Shechem. So Yosef was buried in Shlem, and the reason why he was able to do that is because he was given it by Yaakov as a payment for being involved in the burial. And Rashi goes on to say, Shechem echad al achacha, one Shechem over your brother. Here he says the word Shechem is literal, meaning it refers to the city of Shechem. That will be yours. You have one more portion than your brothers. Meaning to say, you have one more portion than your brothers, not because of your brothers. Rashi is saying, you might have thought that Yosef gets this extra portion because of what he went through, what his brothers did to him. No, that's not why. He's getting the extra portion only because he's involved in the burial. It's payment. And now so that answers the second question we had is, how can he give him this extra portion? He's not giving it to him as a firstborn. He's giving it to him as a payment. And then we come to how does he interpret with my sword and with my bow? The Rashi says, when they killed Shimon and Levi, Kishahargu Shimon and Levi as Anshe Shechem, when Shimon and Levi killed the people of Shechem, Niskansu kol sevivoseyem v'izdaveglem. All the people around them gathered to engage in a battle. Is somebody trying to say something? Okay, so I'll mute you. So, as it states, V'chagar Yaakov klei mochama kenegdan, and Yaakov waged a battle against them. Now, this is a very difficult approach. The reason why this is difficult is because in chapter 35, verse 15, it says specifically it says, Yaakov called the name of the place, it says there in chapter, and they travel from there. Hold on one second. No, I gotta, hold on. Not 35, maybe 34. There's a little bit of a different, hold on one second, let me cite the exact verse. Hold on one second. Yeah, in chapter 35, verse 5, it says specifically that the people around him did not pursue Jacob because they were afraid. The fear of God was on the cities that were around them, and they did not pursue after the children of Jacob. But here we have a problem in our pasuk, because our pasuk says that Yaakov is giving to Yosef all of the territory that he took with his sword and his bow. But what there's no reference to that. In fact, the verse says it's the opposite. So Rashi says there was a war. Rashi follows the midrash of Bereshis Rabbah that says that 7 years after the battle of Shechem, there was a fight that the Amorites gathered together and attacked Jacob and his family, and Jacob defended Jacob defended his family and conquered the territory of Shechem, and he gave it to Yosef. So this is against the literal text, and really, usually the midrashim have at least a basis in the text, but here, this seems to be the basis, that there was a battle and we don't know about. And so that's the first interpretation. So this verse is challenging for two reasons. First of all, how could he give Yosef a double portion? Now he's saying he gave him an extra portion as a payment for his services. And number two, where does it say that Yaakov defeated Shechem the Amorites with his bow and his arrow and his sword. So Rashi says he did. It's just not recorded in the text of the Torah. There's an ancient midrash that Rashi's relying upon that says that they attacked Joseph. They attacked Yaakov 7 years after the battle of Shem, and Yaakov defeated them. There's an alternative explanation of the Rashi, which says it's not necessarily the case that Rashi is relying upon that ancient midrash, but it's possible that what Rashi means is that they saw Yaakov with his weapons ready to go to battle, and they threw down everything and ran away, and that's how Jacob conquered it. So there's two possible readings because this verse does seem difficult because it goes against the text. Now Rashi is going to give another explanation, alternative explanation, and before we get to that, we'll pause for a second as Rashi also offers a second explanation. Let's just review. So we have the first one in our hands. When we go to the second one, the first approach is that he paid him an extra portion because he was involved with the burial, and Yaakov himself had conquered the territory of the Amorites, either in a battle 7 years after the battle of Shechem, or else they ran away right away after they saw Yaakov with all of his weapons. And so when Yaakov says, with my sword and with my bow, means when they saw Yaakov with his sword and his bow. Rashi gives a second explanation. Davar acher, alternative explanation. When he says, I'm giving you Shechem echad al achecha, it means, this is controversial, he says, Shechem echad al achecha, Shechem echad ya bechora, means he's giving him the bechora. He's giving Yosef the firstborn. Sheyitlu banav shnei chalakim. Joseph's sons were going to take two portions, meaning to say, Joseph's sons were Ephraim and Manasseh, and they each got a portion in the land. So they were given two portions. Joseph got an extra portion. It doesn't refer to the city of Shechem, but it refers to an extra portion that Yosef's sons got. They got two, everybody else got one. Shechem lashon cheleku. Shechem means a portion, and that's how Unclus translates it. And Rashi proves that this is what it means. He cites several other examples in the Torah. He says there are many examples. He cites a verse from Psalms, Ki tishitemo Shechem. He cites a pasuk from Tashit Sonai Lefanai Lechelkam, another verse, and he also cites Achalka Shechem, another verse from Psalms. Derech Yiratzchu Shlema, he's citing that's a verse from Hosea, and Ishchalko Avdo Shechem Echad, to worship him as one portion. Anyway, from Habakkuk and Zephaniah. And so, according to this second approach, Yosef he's getting an extra firstborn portion. Now, this is directly against what the Torah itself is going to command us at the beginning of Parashas Kiseitze, when the Torah says, if you have two wives, one whom you love more than the other one who's loved, one is hated, then you're not allowed to give the firstborn portion to the son of the woman you love. You have to give the firstborn portion to the son who comes out first. It seems like that's specifically what this Rashi is saying Yaakov did not do. Yaakov gave the firstborn portion to Yosef's sons because presumably he loved Rachel the most. And so this Rashi is, in that sense, against the later commandment of the Torah. So then it says, Asher lakachti miyad Amori. And how does Rashi, in this alternative approach, explain the second part of the verse? It says, I took it from the Amorites. What does that mean? That doesn't refer to when Shimon and Levi defeated the city of Shechem. Rashi says, Miyad Esav. It refers to when Yaakov took it from Esav. But Esav's not an Amorite. Esav is from Abraham. So Rashi explains that by saying She'asa Maisa Amori. When it says I took it from the Amorites, it means I took it from Esav, who was acting like an Amorite. And he says, basically what he's saying is, where do I get this extra portion? This extra portion that I'm giving to Joseph, that's what I bought from Esav. That's what I bought from Esav, and I'm giving that to you. So basically, it was not a pure firstborn. It was something he bought from Esav and then transferred. And Esav is who's the one who's referred to as an Amorite. Alternatively, why is Esav called an Amorite? Not because he acted like the Amorites in marrying the Canaanites, etc. How did he act like the Amorites? It says in the verse that what did he do? He married the daughters of Chet, and hold on, and he married the daughters of Chet, so he acted like an Amorite. Alternative explanation is Shayatzad Aviv Be'imrei Piv. Rashi's third explanation is the most creative, and he's saying that I took from the Amorite, Ha'emori, does not refer to the Amorites. Knock that out of our mind. Reject that. It means from the word Amor, to say. I took it from the one who spoke in a deceitful manner, i.e. Esav. Because Esav used to trick his father with his words. So therefore, according to the second approach, let me just summarize what he's saying. He's saying Yaakov is saying, the Torah Rashi is saying that Yaakov is giving giving Yosef the firstborn double portion, not as a payment, but just because he's viewing him as the firstborn. And when it says in the verse, he took it from the Amorites, it means he took it from Esav. How is Esav an Amorite? Either he acted like an Amorite, or else Amorite does not mean an Amorite, but it refers to speaking, Amor, to say. And Esav acted he spoke in a deceitful manner, and Yaakov took it from him. And then, according to this approach, we have a problem, because it says in the verse that he took it becharbi uvikashti. He says he took it from the Amorite with his sword and his bow, but Yaakov never took anything from Esav with his sword and with his bow. So how is he going to explain that? What do you mean? It says in the verse he took it with his sword and his bow. Where did Yaakov take anything with his sword and his bow from Esav? So there, Rashi has to say the following. He has to say, when it says his sword and his bow, it doesn't mean his sword and his bow. It means he chachmati utfilati. I took it from Esav with my wisdom and my prayer. So therefore, that the word chachmati, the word charbi means my wisdom here. How can this be? So we know that in Psalms it says in the Psalms which we read every day, cherev pipiot, that the double-edged sword, that's the sword of the mouth. So here we're saying the sword is a reference to our prayer or our wisdom. So this is the Rashi's explanations of this difficult verse. You could see Rashi is clearly struggling with this verse, and he views it as a challenge, and he has to and try and make sense of it. So that's how he gets to those explanations. Now that we've seen the Rashi, again, the two explanations, either he's payment as a salary for his services rendered, or else he's the firstborn. Either Yaakov got it from the Shem, from the Amorites through battle, or else he got it from Esav through his wisdom and prayer. So now let me just refer to a couple of other sources about this. First, we'll go to the Talmud in Baba Basra 123a. We'll go to the Talmud in Baba Basra 123a. The Talmud says, the following. Hold on one second. Hold on. Okay, so this is what the Talmud says. The Talmud says in Baba Basra 123a, Mikan dechelko shel Yosef pi shnayim ke'echad haya v'lo pi shnayim b'chol hanechasim. Hold on one second. Just give me 1 second. I'll be right back in 1 second. I want to actually read this from the text of the Talmud. Hold on 1 second. So in order to understand the point that's being made here in the text, we have to go to the Gemara Yesh Nochlin, the laws of inheritance discussed in Baba Basra. And we'll first look at the text of the Gemara in Baba Basra. The Gemara there teaches as follows. The Torah says that the firstborn gets a double portion. Now, what does it mean to get a double portion? Pishnayim, does it mean Pishnayim ka'echad or Einu ela Pishnayim b'chol hanechasim? So it doesn't mean that the firstborn, well, let's say it's like this. If there are 3 brothers, it's simple. If there are 3 brothers, you take one brother, if there are 2 brothers, it's simple. You divide into 3. One brother gets 1/3, the other brother gets a 2/3, which is a double portion over the brother, but it's also a double, basically an extra portion of the whole estate. So really the question is, when you divide up, when you give the firstborn the double portion, is he just getting one extra portion over all of the brothers? Meaning to say, if there are 5 brothers, you divide the estate into 6, and the firstborn gets 2, and the other gets 2 portions, the others get 4. Or do you divide the whole estate into 2? The firstborn gets half of that, and then the others are then the other 4 would just have to split. I mean to say, if there were 6 brothers, would you say, if there are 5 brothers, would you say that the other 4 split a third, and the firstborn gets the extra third? I mean, say, does he get 2/3 of the estate, and the other 4 brothers split that 1/3? How do we view it? So that's the basic question. And so from here, the Gemara wants to suggest that from Joseph, we see from the story of Joseph that Joseph was just basically getting one extra portion. Shechem echad al chalko, that he was getting just one extra portion. And that's what the Talmud is saying. Meaning to say that Joseph got one, that if they all got, if there were 5 brothers and they all got one portion, Joseph got 2 portions. They would subdivide the estate into 6 parts. And so that's how the Talmud understands it. Mikan, this is what the Talmud says. Mikan dechelko shel Yosef. We see from here that the portion of Joseph was, hold on, let me see if I can find it. That the portion of Joseph was Pishnayim ke'echad, was one extra portion, and not an extra portion in the whole estate. So Rav Papa then says to Abaye something. Rav Papa says, how do we know that that's the way to read this? Maybe it just means, says Rav Papa to Abaye, maybe it just means that Jacob gave Joseph just an extra palm tree. How did we know that he got a double portion over all of his brothers? Maybe it means, say, one portion doesn't mean you get a whole city or a whole extra portion of the land. Maybe we know that he's just getting a little bit extra, like an extra tree. How do we know it's a whole extra portion? He says, that's why it says in the later verse, Ephraim and Manasseh are like Reuven and Shimon are for me, meaning to tell us that he got indeed an extra portion equivalent. They each got a portion, just like Ruvain and Shimon. And so that's the Talmudic understanding of that. Now, yes, hold on, let me see. Hold on one second, let me pause. Okay, so I have a few texts here first is from the Bereshis Rabbah. Actually, I'm not going to read it because it's just a restatement of what Rashi said. And then, okay, the Midrash here is also. Let me just, I'll read one Midrash that was not cited in the Rashi. This is the Midrash Agada, which I kind of referred to as follows. It says, I gave to you one Shechem over your brothers. And the Midrash Agada, this is from Kiseitze, he says the following. When a man will have two wives, says the Midrash, this actually refers to Rachel and Leah. One who was loved, because it says, Vayechi games Rachel miLeah. Jacob loved Rachel more than Leah. And Leah, when it says one who is hated, that actually refers to Leah, because it says, Vayara Hashem kisnu Leah. God saw Leah was hated. And then the firstborn will be from the hated wife. That's Reuven. He was the firstborn. And then it says, on the day that you bequeath the land to your children, when you come to divide up the land of Israel at the time of his death, he was not allowed to choose Joseph. Shaya ben Rachel b'makom Shaya Reuven. He shouldn't have been allowed to choose Joseph, who was the son of Rachel, in a place where there was Reuven. And even though he says, it says the Midrash, even though it says, I gave you one Shechem on your brother, Joseph was still not called the firstborn of Jacob, only Reuven. Because the firstborn, Ben Asnua Yakir, the firstborn of the hated one, you shall recognize. Meaning to say, even though he's hated, he's still your firstborn. As it says, actually, in these verses, it's right there in the verses, Reuven Bechori Ata. It says it specifically at the beginning of chapter 49. It says, those are the first words he says to Reuven. Reuven, you are my firstborn. It says it's very clear that he was the first of his issue. And V'lo Mishpat HaBechorah. And Reuven is the one who is the law of the firstborn. So Reuven is the one who was the firstborn. As it says, V'lo Kiruloki who Reshit and V'lo Reuven Mishpat HaBechorah. As it says, when it says that Joseph is the firstborn, it doesn't mean that he has the laws of the firstborn. That's not what it means. Shalom Nikral Yosef Bechor Yaakov Kim Ruvain. As it says, Vahi B'nei Ruvain Bechor Yisrael. There's another verse that says, behold the children of Ruvain, the Bechor Yisrael, at the beginning of Parshas Bamidbar. So the Midrash is saying very clearly, the answer is, Yosef got this extra gift, but that doesn't mean he was the firstborn. He was just getting an extra gift, and Reuven remained the firstborn. What does it mean that Reuven remained the firstborn? Maybe it means Yaakov gave him extra, but we don't see that in the text. So we don't see that directly in the text. So what does it mean? What does it mean? Let me see here. Here's what it says. So this is how they try to explain it. This is how the Midrash, this is how the commentaries try to explain what Yaakov did. So he says as follows. Let me just read it. Let me just read the commentary here of Rabbi kasher and in the Torah Shlema. He says, the Ramban comments on these verses in Parshas Ki Teitzei that this mitzvah, that you're not allowed to favor the one whom you love, that only applies while the firstborn is still alive. But if the firstborn has died in the life of his father, even though, technically speaking, there is a law that, let's say the firstborn died, then the double portion goes to his son. The way this is termed in the Gemara is that the firstborn inherits a double portion even in the grave, even while he's dead. Nevertheless, once the firstborn dies, then the father has permission to give another son the double portion, because it says, Al Pinei HaBechor. While the firstborn is alive, you can't choose another one. But once he's dead, you can choose. And so therefore, Yaakov was not prohibited to do this, because when the land was divided, this is the technical answer. The rabbis have saved Yaakov and saved Yaakov from a violation of the Torah. Why? This is why the rabbis are the best. Because when the land was divided, Reuven wasn't alive anymore. So since he wasn't alive, therefore they could give the double portion to Joseph. Because even though a firstborn inherits while he's in the grave, but once the grave occurs, then you have the right to choose it. And that's why it says, Natati b'choroto livnei Yosef. So that's, they have like a technical answer. But Rabbi Kasher also cites in Midrash Bamidbar Rabbah, it says, Karbano karas kesef achas, al tikri karas el akaras. Don't say that his offering was one plate of silver, but a removal of silver. This corresponds to Jacob, who ripped out the firstborn from Reuven and gave it to Joseph, as it says, Ani natati Hashem echad alechecha. So to answer the question, did Jacob take the firstborn away from Reuven, which is an excellent question. It's a dispute. Some say he was justified in being able to do it, and some say he did not. He did it without justification. Some say he didn't do it.
Wasn't Simeon the second born?
Yeah. Yes. So Shimon was the second born.
So he should have gotten it.
But that's not the way it works. The law of the firstborn is if there's no firstborn, the secondborn doesn't get it. If there's no firstborn, usually the way it works is then everybody gets an equal portion. But here he's giving an extra portion to Joseph. He's making Joseph the firstborn. So that's why that we have the Midrash is struggling with these questions. And it's okay. There's a lot to talk about there. Okay, like I said, I had to stop a little early today. So everything is